This is the story of one of the industrial giants that made Britain great. 200 years before the phrase was invented, it was one of the world's first industrial complexes with interconnected iron ore and limestone quarries, coal mines, coking ovens, blast furnaces, forges, brickworks, factories, and even farms, all sited in and around Ripley. The Butterley Company produced iron and steel, made steam engines, bridges for the world, helped build St Pancras Station, and a host of important engineering products and structures. It also made bricks and was one of the biggest colliery owners in the United Kingdom. And at its height, the company employed 10,000 people. But most important of all, the Butterley story is about the making of Ripley, the Amber Valley, and its people. Before the Butterley Company, Ripley was a hamlet, and Codner Park and Ironville were only water meadows and woodland in the valley of the River Amber. Most men were agricultural labourers, while women either worked in the stocking-making trade or as domestic servants to the local gentry. By the late 1700s, the educated middle class were becoming fascinated with the scientific discoveries of the day and their financial possibilities. It was the age of enlightenment, and the Amber Valley, with its abundant reserves of iron ore, coal and limestone, was ripe for development. Iron had already been smelted in the hamlet of Loscoe since the 16th century. Richard Arkwright had opened the world's first factory at Cromford. The stage was set for the Amber Valley villagers to be part of the Industrial Revolution. So, in 1790, in the reign of George III, two men, Benjamin Outram, a 26-year-old local surveyor, and Francis Beresford, a land-owning lawyer from Alfreton, formed Outram and Company. And a year later they were joined by William Jessup, the famous canal engineer, and John Wright, a Nottingham banker. These far-sighted and practical men launched what was to become the Butterley Company on its long journey to international greatness. The company built their first blast furnace in 1791 on Butterley Fields, land adjacent to the Cromford Canal, built earlier by Outram and Jessup. An engraving shows the one furnace and a casting house. By 1806, there were 3 blast furnaces. The company's first product was pig iron. When the furnace was tapped, the iron ran into sand beds to form ingots. The moulds for the ingots were attached to a main runner, and the name pig iron came about because the arrangement resembled piglets suckling from the mother sow. The liquid iron was also collected in huge ladles and cast into large sand moulds to form castings for products such as rails, steam engines and bridges. The Cromford Canal was vital for the success of the fledgling company. Outram and Jessup, when building the canal, which tunnelled under the Butterley Works, incorporated a unique underground dock and drainage system in the section of the tunnel under the blast furnaces. Known as the Wide Hole, it was double width, where barges could pass each other, and coal, limestone and iron ore from the local quarries and pits was craned up shafts and loaded straight into the furnaces. Finished iron products would then be dispatched by canal boats and transported via the rivers Trent and Humber worldwide. Under Outram and Jessup's leadership, the fledgling company started on its rise to international greatness. They advertised themselves as iron makers. The company made pig iron, iron bars, pipes, boiler plates and castings, including domestic items like window frames. And with gang roads and later railways replacing canals, they expanded into making railway goods, especially rails and wheels and bridges. Initially, Butterley made plate rails where the wheels ran on L-shaped plates. Later, on the Jessop's orders, they made the edge rail, the type used today. A good example of a horse-drawn gang road using Butterley's plate rails was the Denby Gang Road, which carried coal between Denby Colliery and Little Eaton Wharf. It operated with horse-drawn wagons running solely on plate rails up until 1908. At Little Eaton, the company's innovative thinking led to the wagon bodies being transferred by crane onto the barges, an early form of what is now called containerization. Making small and large diameter pipes for the domestic and export market became a major part of their early success. They were used in the development of town water and gas supply systems and for drainage pumps in mines. Pipes were produced right up to the late 1930s. Gas pipes, excavated in Stamford, Lincolnshire, were still in good condition after 111 years underground. By 1914, the company had become a major employer. Workers' houses had been built alongside the works at Butterley at what came to be called Hammersmith. The nearby Butterley Hall was purchased and became the residence of Benjamin Outram and, on his death, the home of William Jessop and his family. Earlier, in 1794, land with valuable coal and iron reserves along the Cromford Canal was put up for sale. Realising the potential of the land, Outram, Jessop, Beresford and Wright quickly bought the lease, and by 1796 commenced to build a foundry, a forge, an office and housing on fields 3 miles to the east of Butterley at Codner Park, becoming fully operational by 1819, producing iron castings and rolled wrought iron bars. A 1930s aerial view of the work shows the eventual extent of the site. After the Battle of Waterloo in 1815, poor harvests and widespread unemployment led to poverty and dissent across the country, leading to riots, and locally at Pentridge, a march to London to overthrow the government. This march was led by a man named Jeremiah Brandreth. He and his fellow revolutionaries, marching from Pentridge towards Nottingham, arrived at the company's gatehouse with the intention of recruiting more men. They were met by company manager George Goodwin, who stood face to face with Brandreth, forcing Brandreth to back down. Brandreth failed to recruit anyone from Butterley, and his stature in the eyes of his followers was fatally diminished. They carried on their march, only to be arrested and executed or deported. Arguably, the actions of the Butterley Company helped prevent England's equivalent to the French Revolution. After the death of William Jessop and the retirement of John Wright, Jessop's son William the Younger became the junior partner to John Wright's son Francis Wright. They continued to expand, winning important contracts such as bridges in Lincolnshire, Vauxhall Bridge over the River Thames, as well as the Gumpty River Bridge in Lucknow, India, and even the cast iron colonnades in front of London's Haymarket Theatre. William Jessop's brother Josiah was also a brilliant engineer and was appointed consultant engineers for the Cromford and High Peak Railway. Butterley gained the contract for the rails and stationary steam engines, one of which is still in working order at Middleton Top near Wirksworth. 3,300 tons of rail were supplied for the 31-mile-long railway, which carried goods and passengers from Buxton to Cromford for over 100 years until the 1960s. From the very start, the Butterley Company had been blessed with coal, iron ore and limestone reserves on their doorstep. Coal Wood and Pentridge pits were almost within hailing distance of the blast furnaces, and a unique network of more than 20 miles of tramways, gang roads, and canals supplied raw materials to the furnaces and finished goods and coal to customers far and wide. By 1824, annual production of 5,000 tonnes of pig iron, together with spiralling demand for household coal, forced Jessup and Wright to lease more land and sink further coal mines, making Butterley the largest coal producer and distributor in the East Midlands. By the 1830s, the Butterley Company was valued at over £2 million at today's prices. Demand for its products were at record levels, and the age of the steam train was dawning. The owners were determined to profit from the railway mania that was starting to sweep the country. Jessup the Younger, although a first-class engineer, preferred to concentrate on iron-making, and with Francis Wright controlling the company's finances, they appointed a series of chief engineers to carry the company into the steam age. Between 1808 and 1885, eminent engineers held the position of chief engineer. Brunton, Miller and Glynn were primarily steam engine designers. Brunton established fitting shops for the manufacture of steam engines, building a steam locomotive in 1813, 16 years before Stephenson's famous rocket. However, Butterley concentrated on designing and building big, powerful marine engines, being renowned for steam dredger engines used in the Caledonian Canal, the Trent and Humber, and the ports of Bristol and Shoreham, also powering the first Liverpool ferries in 1814. Sadly, William Brunton is remembered mainly for his ill-fated mechanical traveller or steam horse. Railway pioneers had the misconception that the weight of the locomotive would be insufficient to grip the rails when pulling a load. To overcome this problem, he designed a locomotive propelled by a pair of steam-driven legs. It travelled at just 2.5 miles per hour. The first machine was used on the Crouch Quarry tramway. The second and final one was supplied to New Bottle Colliery in the northeast. Unfortunately, its boiler exploded, killing 13 people. After Brunton left Butterley in 1815, Miller continued to design bigger and more powerful engines, such as the engines used on the inclines of the Cromford and High Peak Railway. The one located at the top of the sheep pasture incline from Cromford Canal Wharf to Middleton Top is now preserved as a tourist attraction. The next engineer to arrive at Butterley was Joseph Glynn. He carried on the work of his predecessor Joseph Miller, designing and manufacturing large marine engines. Several of his very large marine engines were designed and shipped off to the Baltic for the Russian Navy. Glynn also designed iron roofs, heavy machinery and mills, which were exported to the East and West Indies, America, Europe and the colonies. However, he and the Butterley Company became nationally renowned for their part in draining the fens around Cambridge, Spalding and Ely, a total of approximately 90,000 acres. Much of the success was due to Butterley designed and made large steam-driven scoop wheels, with engines developing 80 horsepower. An engine built in 1831 is preserved at Streatham near Ely as a tourist attraction. A total of 17 Butterley engines and scoop wheels were built between 1827 and 1843 on this nationally important project. Butterley's wrought iron was also sold to the shipbuilding industry. Brunel's Great Britain, launched in 1843, used Butterley wrought iron in its construction, the quality and durability of which can still be seen on display at Bristol Dock. By the 1830s, Jessup the Younger and Francis Wright had become rich Victorian industrialists seeking not only to continue the expansion and upward rise of their company, but also inaugurating and investing in the Midland Railway, later to become the London, Midland and Scottish Railway. Sadly, no portraits exist of Jessup the Younger, the junior partner, who devoted his entire life to the company. He was renowned as an inventor, registering several very important patents. He was also very popular with his workers, always taking their needs into consideration and looking to improve their lives. As a hobby, he bred dogs and could be seen walking his dogs around the works and Butterley Hall. He retired in 1851 and died a year later after a long illness. Out of admiration and gratitude, the workforce and locals paid for memorial windows in Ironville Church, as well as erecting a monument to him at Codner Park. At his funeral there were many tributes describing him as much missed, the most active character ever sustained by a man of business, instrumental in maturing many of the great projects that astonished the world, and the iron house that is Butterley Company has lost her governor and a workman their father. After Jessup the Younger died, Francis Wright became the sole owner of the Butterley Company, and with the wealth it helped to generate, became one of the most successful businessmen in Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire. Like many God-fearing Victorian industrialists, he was concerned about what he saw as the low morals of his workers. Believing that the devil finds work for idle hands, he saw making his and the company's money as a means of improving communities through hard work. With Jessup Jr., he provided the money to build the townships of Codner and Ironville. Good quality terraced housing with gardens, schools, shops, social clubs and churches were all provided and mostly still stand today. Local Butterley-owned farms provided fresh food, and the Mechanics Institute, or Workers' Educational Institute, with its library, lecture hall and coffee room, encouraged learning and self-improvement. Butterley's most famous achievement in the second half of the 19th century, the building of London's St Pancras Station, was a triumph for the company, for Francis Wright and for Sir John Alleyne as chief engineer. It was one of the wonders of Victorian engineering on one of the world's most elegant stations. The 240-foot span roof was designed by William Barlow, and at the time it was the world's largest single-span structure. The lower floor, or undercroft, now used as a shopping area, consisted of 720 cast-iron columns supporting the train tracks above. Back in the 19th century, the lower floor was used to store beer barrels delivered by train from Burton-on-Trent. The erection of the superstructure, both by Butterley's own erectors and local labourers, used 25 wrought iron ribs to form the 240-foot wide arch. Each arch was put into place using 2 large timber stages. 7,000 men worked in Butterley's collieries and ironworks, making the many thousand tons of castings and plates required. Now, thanks to the regeneration of St Pancras as a terminus for the Eurostar, Butterley's incredible station roof can be seen and admired. Sir John Alleyne, as Butterley's chief engineer from 1852 to 1880, was both an inventor and an innovator. The best known of Sir John's many ideas was the Butterley bulb beam. He invented a process where 2 beam sections could be welded together in a rolling process to make beams or girders up to 3 feet deep. Butterley bulb beams were useful for beams for the new ironclad merchant ship. Many were used on the Royal Navy's warship. Perhaps the most prestigious beam was HMS Warrior, recently restored and on display alongside Nelson's Victory at Portsmouth. Having its mines, foundries, workshops, brickworks and quarries in a compact area gave the Butterley Company a unique advantage over its rivals. The company was a self-contained industrial complex. There was no need to travel. Its workforce were within walking distance of their work, and with its network of railways, its raw materials and finished goods could easily and cheaply be transported by its own locomotives and wagons between sites and onto the main line and customers. There was even a timetable of train services between the works at Ripley and Codner Park for workers and management to travel on. By this time, Butterley's success had led to a tenfold increase in the population of Ripley, Codner Park and Ironville. 10,000 people either worked for Butterley or were dependent on Butterley for their livelihoods. In the 1870s, Ironville's vicar wrote of lurid flames shooting up from the blast furnaces, and the regular throbbing of engines with the crash of tremendous steam hammers, keeping the parish always awake. The forgemen worked by day and night, and the furnaces have not been extinguished for years. Life is hard. The process of puddling iron is so exhausting that 2 men have to work at each furnace. Long lines of cottages, all exactly alike in size and dinginess, was discernible through the smoke. Every cottage has a front garden, and many have a pig. Despite the intensity of the work on their faces, the workmen have a proud look and an independence of spirit. No man is thought the worse here if he never shows his countenance inside a place of worship. The company provide a place of worship and build and maintain schools, pay the master, and leave the place to accept or reject its opportunities. Being so self-contained and so self-sufficient gave rise to an independence of spirit and close camaraderie amongst the workforce. Whole families worked for Butterley. Most people never ventured far. Ripley, Codner Park and Ironville had all they needed, socially, spiritually and entertainment-wise. In the 15 years between 1855 and 1870, Butterley had become a gigantic concern, and Francis Wright, as owner, had become fabulously wealthy. He built himself an ostentatious stately home for his wife and 12 children on 5,000 acres of parkland and lakes at Osmaston, near Ashbourne. He believed in hard work and was zealous in his religious beliefs, especially in curbing drunken behaviour. Through his control of the Butterley Company, he believed he could improve the conditions of his workers and foster a Christian sense of community. Church attendance was obligatory, as was Sunday school. As a justice of the peace, he was stern. No public houses or Methodist chapels were allowed in Codner Park or Ironville. On his death in 1873, over 1,200 Butterley workers followed his cortege, and his fortune was valued at nearly £2 billion by today's values. As railway mania spread throughout the world, Butterley's expertise in bridge building won, in 1872, a very large and difficult contract building a railway bridge over the 1,000 feet wide River Maas in Holland, requiring more than 1,000 tons of wrought iron from Butterley's furnaces. Following on from the construction of St Pancras Station, it further enhanced Butterley's international reputation.